Mandy?
Yes, Eve, they're working on the sound. For some reason, we're not getting it.
I just was wondering if this was an interactive sheet to rate them. No, I have to print it out, right? Okay.
Sorry, one of the settings changed. Hold on. Okay, how about now? Can you hear us now, Mandy?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I want to make sure. Eve, can you hear us? Yeah.
Yes, I could hear you. I was on another sheet. Sorry.
Thank you. So we're going to start again so Eve and Mandy are able to hear us and anyone else participating by Zoom can hear us. I should have started by saying we do have a translator available today. If there's anyone who needs translation services who's on Zoom, there's an icon on the bottom of the Zoom screen. Please use that. And we will provide translation. And now we are going to have that translated.
Hola, buenos días, bienvenidos. Esta junta tiene interpretación al español. Si necesitan los servicios, en la barra inferior de la pantalla hay un icono que es del globo terráqueo. Pueden hacer clic para escucharlo en español. Gracias.
Thank you. All right. So again, bear with me. Thank you for your patience as we make sure that everyone can hear what we're doing here today. So the board today is meeting to consider candidates to fill the provisional vacancy on the board of San Luis Coastal Unified School District. We do appreciate the interest that has been expressed in joining our board and are excited about this opportunity to make this important decision here today. I'm going to review the process we have and that we'll be following. On December 19, 2022, trustee Catherine Eisendrath Rogers sent a letter to Dr. Prater and County Superintendent of Schools, Dr. James Brescia, stating that she was resigning from the board of our district as of 11:59 p.m., December 31, 2022, and this created the vacancy on the board. Under the California Education Code, the school board has 60 days from when a vacancy is created on the board to fill that vacancy. Therefore, the board must fulfill the process to appoint the next trustee representing Area 7, according to Board Bylaw 9223 and Education Code Sections 5091 and 5093. Today, we consider making a provisional appointment within the 60-day timeframe. The appointment is made based on a majority vote of the school board, and the appointment will become effective immediately. The person selected for this provisional board vacancy will hold office until the next regularly scheduled election for district board members, which will be November of 2024. The California Education Code recognizes the appointment as a provisional appointment that can be challenged if a sufficient number of individuals submit a petition calling for an election. Because of the cost of a special election, we hope that such an election will not be necessary. Should it become necessary, the district would be responsible for paying all costs out of the general fund, which would be approximately $500,000. Today, we are interviewing 5 candidates who have expressed interest in being appointed to the board and who passed our screening process as eligible candidates. Pursuant to Education Code Section 35107, to serve on the board, an applicant must be 18 years of age or older, a citizen of the state, a resident of the school district or trustee area if applicable, a registered voter, and not disqualified from holding a civil office. The board president, board clerk, Marilyn Roger, and superintendent reviewed the candidate applications and announced the eligible candidates on February 6, 2023. Following this announcement, the district asked the public to submit public comment and correspondence regarding the candidates for the board to consider at today's meeting. We have also permitted members of the public to give public comment regarding the candidates at the beginning of today's meeting. We will be interviewing candidates one by one. So candidates, this is what you need to listen to. In order to maintain the integrity of each interview and to avoid providing an advantage to any particular candidate, the board will ask that only the interviewing candidate remain in this room during the interview. We'll ask the other candidates to wait outside of the room until it is their turn. And you can go just next door. There's a seating area in there, and there's coffee and cookies, and make yourself at home while you wait. The board recognizes that this is simply a request it is making of the candidates, and that each candidate may choose to remain in the room if they wish, but the board does prefer that, in order to, out of fairness, that you wait next door. The initial interview order was determined by lot, or for a more modern explanation, by the use of a random number generator. Each candidate will be asked the same questions as developed by the board president, board clerk, and superintendent based on past appointment processes and input from educational partners, including staff, students, and the community. Current board members were each given these questions randomly. And again, the order of the questions was also determined by a random order number generator. Each candidate will be given approximately 20 minutes total for their interview. So this means approximately 3 or 4 minutes for each question and answer. After the interviews have concluded, a full discussion by all board members present will take place. Afterwards, a board member can make a motion and the vote will be taken to make the appointment. And again, we want to thank all candidates for your interest in serving on our board. We were really pleased with the quality of the candidates, and it's going to make today's decision challenging. Regardless of what we decide, we hope the process will encourage all of the participants and anyone else in the audience or following the process to consider running for school board in the future. Now, public comment, as we stated, is available only at this time. We won't have public comment any other time except right now. So if anyone wishes to make a public comment, you have 3 minutes to do so, and you can approach the podium and give your name and use your 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board at this time? All right, and I'll ask Ms. Dawson, is there anyone who, oh, yes. Yeah, go ahead, come on up and state your name, please, and Mr. Unger is, I can see, prepared and ready to start the clock ticking. Oh, we also have it up here, so your 3 minutes begins now.
That's a big clock.
It is a big clock. It's usually a big room. We're in a small room today. All right.
Hi, yeah, my name's Teddy Walker. I'm here to speak on behalf of Brian Clausen, and try and stick to the 3 minutes here. So my wife and I moved up here to San Luis Obispo in 2010. We have 2 sons that are currently in the SLO school district, and we'll have gone from kindergarten all through SLO High by the time they're all done. So junior at SLO High and a 6th grader at Los Ranchos right now. A little history on myself. I worked at Cal Poly for 11 years on moving up here, and then moved over to the private sector just a little under 2 years ago. So Brian kind of helped me at a crossroads in my career path, and what I've experienced in the last year and a half or so under his leadership is it's a culture of transparency and humility. So going into the private sector, I really didn't know what to expect, coming from education and competitive athletics for the better part of my whole life, my whole adult life. I was really welcomed into a business where I wasn't sure where my place was. And through his leadership, I've really flourished in the role, and he's taught me to lean into my strengths and really put me into a position of leadership, which I didn't expect. Developing a skill set in a different sector would really translate to where I am currently. So I can really speak to the culture of the company, and that the feeling that I get when I walk in every day, that teamwork is at the very heart of everything that we do. And though the individual contributions are really celebrated, we go back to the overarching goal of the team really accomplishing the goals that we set out for every quarter, every day, and what we do. And under his leadership, I've experienced a wide variety of emotions, but really feeling that welcoming culture and coming into the building every day is that certain intrinsic feeling that making a positive is something that's really valued from an individual. Yeah, and just to wrap up here in 30 seconds, it's very short. Collaboration and inclusiveness are really what prop that culture up, and bringing people together from the different departments daily. The lines of communication are wide open, and having an open door to the leader of the company to be able to ask questions about any facet of the business, and that transparency being there really builds a lot of confidence from an individual level to continue to contribute in my role daily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Right. Ms. Dawson, is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to participate, who wishes to make public comment?
No, there's not.
Right, we're now going to proceed. So our candidates will be interviewed in the following order. Matthew Savage, Susanna Jimenez Lerner, Brian Clausen, Martha Jorgensen Lindholm, Catherine Osm Nelson. So Mr. Savage should remain, and if the rest of you wouldn't mind to traipse next door, we'll let you know when we're ready.
Okay.
And once you've completed your interview, then at that time, you're welcome to remain in the room if you wish. I just want to say hello. All right, we'll have you come up. Let's let Dr. Prater return and then we'll get started.
Not that tall.
Okay. So once again, these questions were assigned by our magic random number generator process. And our first question comes from Ms. Dobler-Drew. Eve, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I was.
All right, we're
Hi,
ready.
I'm Eve Dobler-Drew, and the question is, what do you feel is the role of the school board? And secondly, what is the role of an individual board member?
Well, the school board is supposed to set an environment up for the children, which is why we're all here, I think, to make it better for them. So most of our decisions would be for whatever's best for them. And of course, within the law. Individual board member, I think in my case, I'd want to take my experience from teaching and give it back to the district in any way I could. I was a coach. I was very fortunate. I had John Wooden's assistant coach as my assistant in track. He gave me a bunch of information about John Wooden's basketball program. I'd like to give that back to the school. I created a team building process in my classrooms that I think I could help the young teachers who are just coming in be more competent, again, giving back. And that would be my role, I think, as a board member, to give back to the district and the kids.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, next, Mr. Unger.
So, excuse me. Tell us your understanding of how our district's funded and how might this affect our ability to meet the board's stated priorities?
Good question. I know I was just in a meeting where you have gotten 2 bonds in, and the bonds, of course, they're all coming from the people in the district. And I sat through the what is the PLA. So you find things that you need to have done in the district. You're planning on trying to get contractual agreements with contractors, et cetera, to get things done. And that's kind of what I know about the district's funding.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Mrs. Roger. Thank you.
Okay, my question is, what is the achievement gap? And what, in your opinion, are some of the causes and possible solutions?
For the kids?
I would assume so. Am I able to elaborate on the question, or I just have the question?
You just have the question.
So let me read it again.
Okay.
What is the achievement gap? What, in your opinion, are some of the causes and possible solutions?
Okay, when I first started teaching, I had, I was a coach. And they opened a position for me. There was only one position, that was remedial math. I was actually biology major. And we had 880 kids in the school. I had 220 who couldn't multiply and divide. I couldn't believe it was 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders. They couldn't do basics. And I think somewhere along the line, we missed that. It happened again. I got out of education, got back in and got a pre-algebra class. And the same thing happened. It was in a junior high school and they couldn't multiply and divide. So of course they couldn't do fractions, decimals, percents, couldn't do algebra. So I think somewhere we have to make sure that all of our kids get the basics first and then keep working on that and getting them so they understand how to do the basics in anything. I had kids in a biology class, college prep, and they couldn't read and comprehend, 9th, 10th graders. Again, I couldn't understand how they could actually get to me and not be able to do those things. And of course, going on to college and not being able to read and comprehend, you're dead. You can't go on. So I think emphasizing that every grade that they go through, that they understand the basics is extremely important to get them to the next level.
Thank you. Mr. Buckman.
Yes, thank you. Understanding that there are many issues that are brought before the school board, how can individual board members remain focused on the mission of students' achievement and well-being?
That would be your goal as a board member. I mean, everything goes down to what's best for the kids. And that's how you make your decisions.
And I have the next question, and that is, as a board member, how would you foster a climate of trust, not only on the board, but also throughout the community and the district?
I just, I think it comes down to my word is my bond. If I say that I'm going to do something, then that's what I have to do. And if I change my mind, I have to make sure the people in the district or on the board understand where I'm coming from. And I would absolutely make sure that they understood that I've changed my position on something so they know beforehand. I'm not going to blindside anybody. I've seen that happen too many times when I was a former board member. So yeah, just be open and honest and tell everybody what I feel. and then stay with that in that path and don't deviate.
Thank you. And Mr. Banfield.
Could you share any experiences you might have had working with colleagues on a problem where there was both a diversity of opinions and a spirit of cooperation in the solution?
The only way I think you can do that is you have to remain, you don't take it personally. If you don't take it personally, I think you can be objective. You can, they have their own opinion, you have yours, and you try to work through those differences as best you can. And as long as you're being upfront and honest, I think you can get through pretty much anything. You may not be able to change their minds and they may still stay what they're going to do, but that's okay. That's their opinion. That's why they're on the board.
Thank you. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to make?
Yeah. Whether I'm chosen or not, I would like to help the district in any way I can. I have a pet project, and that is newbie teachers. I remember going into education, and education classes do not tell you what's going to happen when you walk into a classroom. They just don't. And I created a team building process that involved just working with the children and behavioral modification. I'm not making it personal, not doing anything like that, just, making it so they understand that if their behavior is correct, then everything is okay. If their behavior is bad, then there's a process we're going to go through, and they can stop it at any time. And it took me a year or so to get to that point where I could actually get them to understand, as long as they stayed back in the path, everything was good. I didn't take it personally. I didn't try to get anybody. But the minute it got bad, then we got this, here we go down this lane. And do you really want to do this? And most of them, after a while, just decided that wasn't, they didn't want to do that. And I taught 3 first-degree murders. One killed at 15, one at 18, and one at 19. They never physically attacked me because I never personally attacked them. I only attacked their bad behavior. Even though they killed later on, they didn't kill me because they didn't feel it was necessary, because I never went after them personally, only their bad behavior. And every time the bad behavior went back to where it was supposed to be, we were good. So there is a way to do that. And I would like to help the district in any way I can with your new teachers, if it would be acceptable.
Well, thank you. And thanks
Okay.
again for your interest in applying and your interest in the district. We
And it's going
very
to be
much
hard. You do
appreciate it.
have some good people.
We know it's going to be a tough
Okay.
decision. So you're welcome to stay in the room now, or where you can go next door, wherever you're comfortable.
Go get a cookie.
Okay, go get a cookie. Go get a cookie. All right. So next is Susanna Lerner.
I'll send her over.
Okay, Dr. Prater actually just headed that way. Oh, are things falling down? Huh? Oh. Yeah. That's right. Good thing I didn't wear my mini skirt.
This is a good way to come in. Everyone laughing.
We're just talking about the modesty family. Modesty.
Oh, yes, I saw it fall earlier.
Oh, we had no idea.
We all just
From
sort of
the
looked
side.
away.
Oh,
We
thank you.
didn't see.
Shield your eyes.
Well, I saw you have really warm boots on today, so they don't slip off as easily, Mark.
All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me.
We're going to go through our questions determined by that magic random number generator process. So, and our first person asking the first question is Eve Dobler-Drew, who's participating via Zoom.
Hello, welcome. And the first question is, what do you feel is the role of the school board and each individual member? So two-part question.
Well, overseeing major decisions and the financial budget of the district, I would think is the most important part, and really getting to know the community, being able to celebrate what's happening in the schools, as well as notice what could be improved within the district. Definitely with guidance of the superintendent, but also they oversee the superintendent. They're your boss, as I understand. So it's sort of a check and balance of both sides, and they are community members as well. So knowing that, the community it's their best interest to really keep an eye on what's going on in the district. And I enjoy how members of the district come in and present, as well as encouraging you to get out to the events, but to, really know what's going on besides just sitting behind the desk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Mr. Unger.
So tell us your understanding of how the district's funded and how might this affect our ability to meet the board's stated priorities?
So we do get, our funding is obviously from the state, but a large portion of it, and I do not know the percentage off the top of my head, from PG&E. And I know that that's an issue, as PG&E's Diablo Canyon will be closing in 2025, at least at this point. That's still the official decision. And that has been a big shift, and the stopgap has been a challenge over the last few years to prepare for. And the attendance of the students also is, and then we also have Title I funding as well. But that would be definitely one of my challenges, is that my financial portion experience is not as large as some of the candidates here today. But I am, as my last name says, a learner. So I'm willing to get to know that portion of the board's responsibilities.
Oh, it's me. Okay.
Mrs. Rogers.
What is the achievement gap? And what, in your opinion, are some of the causes and possible solutions?
Well, achievement gap, I would, in definition, I would assume you're talking about challenges that students face that are outside the classroom that would affect their performance within the classroom, whether it be financial or family dynamics or homelessness. And what are those challenges, and how can we reach those students and narrow the gap between the children who have much support and privilege to where achievement is easier to come by, and programs that can reach those children, such as our bilingual education or after-school programs, or the San Luis Coastal Education Foundation also is trying to find what those challenges are and how can we reach those kids through programs like the summer school program that's obviously been improving. And sorry, got a little, and how our teachers can identify who those students are and how we can reach them.
Thank you.
Mr. Buckman.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
Understanding that there are many issues that are brought before the school board, how can individual board members remain focused on the mission of student achievement and well-being?
Well, you established your mission statements, and they're on the website, but I would imagine as a board member, you would definitely keep those in mind. And how does each situation that comes up, how does that fit into your mission statements, and where? And I would imagine when people come up and address the board, you have to, in your mind, and maybe even in a more formal sense, think about, well, where does that fit in, and where does that fall in in its priority list, and how can we make a difference based on that request?
Thank you.
As a board member, how would you foster a climate of trust, not only for the board, but also throughout the community and the district?
Well, I feel like part of that is a long time coming, not just when you're sitting at that seat. Would have to, I mean, part of it is because it's an elected position. You would imagine that you've been in the community, you know, many community members. You have some of that trust already in place. And I feel I have that at least coming from years of being in the district, either as a parent or a teacher or a volunteer. And then also really listening and really having an open mind, really having sympathy without closing off, and really being able to process what the community is requesting or asking of the board.
Thank you. Mr. Banfield.
Could you share any experiences you might have had working with colleagues on a problem where there was both a diversity of opinions and a spirit of cooperation in the solution?
Well, one comes to mind, of course, would be pandemic related, but I was on the board for grad night for several years. And when COVID happened, you know, the first year, it was obvious we wouldn't be able to have a grad night, but we had funds that we had already raised because it was March, right? So our funds had already been raised and the board had this money and we were a nonprofit and that money had to be utilized. And we wanted to celebrate those students that were seniors, and how would we be able to do that? And so through lots of Zoom meetings, obviously, but we had to come up with a different plan of how to help celebrate them, and working with the high school as well as what their ideas were for graduation. And so we ended up contributing to the parking lot parade and helping with the decorations, and then giving them I mean, it seems trite now, but it was just such a tragic time for these kids to try to celebrate, but to give them a meaningful gift that they could take with them. And we used the funds from grad night. And that was, you know, just trying to figure out exactly how to use our funds and to make it in some sort of meaningful celebration. That's one example, more recent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And do you have any closing comments for us?
Well, first of all, I was encouraged to apply for this position from several members of the community that I respect and that are involved in different ways with the district. And I was very honored to even have someone request that. And those people that did speak to me, they were concerned that there weren't going to be community members stepping up to help. And when I saw the applicants and reviewed the different applications once they were revealed on Friday, I have to say I'm relieved. I would be honored to be put in this position as a board member, but I'm relieved to see extremely qualified candidates on that list of 5. And I'm honored just to be here and to be interviewing. So
Well,
thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Thank you very much. As you know, you may either wait here or go have a cup of coffee and a cookie or whatever you wish.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for coming. We're going to be asking our questions as assigned by our random process. And
Sounds good.
the first question will be asked by Ms. Dobler-Drew, who's participating via Zoom.
Hello. The
Hi.
first question is, hi. The first question is, what do you feel is the role of the school board? And then secondly, the role of an individual school board member?
Great, thank you. Well, so in considering this opportunity and the open position, I have done some reading. I read the book Boardsmanship about what it means to be a part of a school board in the state of California. And I've also just kind of done some analysis of what the school board does compared to other boards that I've been on. And so I guess specifically to answer your question about what's the role of the school board, the role of the school board is to define the vision, mission, and values of the district. It's to oversee the financial direction and provide financial stewardship. And it's to work directly with the superintendent, and with the superintendent really being the only member of the staff that has direct accountability to the board. And so, I mean, I view that as a role where you're providing high level guidance and direction, but really working together as a group to come up with cohesive strategy and direction for the district. And so specifically, what is the role of a specific board member? I think the first thing is you're one of 7 people. And so an effective board is one that collaborates and works together to come to effective outcomes, and then supports those outcomes as a group, even if it's not your specific opinion. And so I view the role of a board member as being part of a team, and someone who's aiming to solve problems and drive direction as a part of a group. And where I think that's particularly interesting for me is in my career, I've been involved in starting a number of companies and leading a number of companies. I think kind of the hallmark of the companies I've worked in has been building leadership teams that work together and focus on team-based outcomes. I take a lot of pride in being a part of a team. And I've served on 2 corporate boards and 5 nonprofit boards. So I have experience, not on school boards, but on boards of a range of different types. And I think really the key success factor that I've seen on the boards, if you sit on 7 boards, you see some that are successful and some that are not successful. You can learn as much from the ones that aren't successful as the successful ones. But I mean, I think there's not a place for ego on a school board is a really important point I would make. I think a board member should not come in here and really push an agenda. They should be part of a team. And if I were to be selected for this opening, I would view my responsibility as, first learning. I would have a lot to learn, and then being a collaborative, supportive member of this group. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Unger.
Sure. Tell us your understanding of how our district's funded, and how might this affect our ability to meet the board's stated priorities?
Yeah, so I mean, my understanding is that the district is a basic aid district funded through property taxes. It is I'd characterize it as in the spectrum of basic aid districts, closer to standard district funding than most. So closer to the borderline between being a basic aid and non-basic aid district. And so because of that, trends in property taxes are going to have a big factor on the district's revenue and ability to spend money over the coming years. I was involved in discussions around Diablo Canyon closing. I mean, Diablo Canyon being a source of property tax revenue, historically has been an important component of the income to the district. Even though Diablo Canyon has been extended, the way it's being depreciated will lead to lower and lower income from Diablo Canyon over time. I mean, I guess some specific thoughts I have about funding for the district, or because property taxes are a driver, the implementation of new sources of energy near the district, wind, battery programs that could end up here or not. And how those are approached could be interesting new sources of property tax income. I think looking at trends in new housing, and new housing affects both property tax income, but possibly student population on the expense side. As I spent some time reviewing the 10-year budget, the 10-year budget forecast. I mean, my observations on that were that there's some real boons in the near term due to COVID funding, due to the Diablo Canyon settlement, that make the next few years situations where the district's forecast to be in the black, but then years 4 through 10 of the budget demonstrated that some of those funding sources go away, and basically the budget was running negative in years 4 through 10. So to your question of what's my understanding of how it's funded? I mean, my specific answer is I understand property taxes being the main source of income, but there's other sources as well. And as I reviewed the budget, I mean, it appeared to me that, personnel is obviously the largest expense of the district and the biggest consideration in planning future budget, both direct costs and benefits. I think on the topic of kind of financial approach for the district, a couple of things I would just put in as commentary. I work in the energy industry, and so I spend a lot of time working on energy contracts in the solar space. I think that gives me some perspective as new sources of energy like wind and battery maybe come into the district, how those could be best approached and considered as other sources of income. Also, the fact that many of the Measure C buildings will require solar, I think is something I hope to provide some expertise on how to do that in the financially most beneficial way, possibly even using solar as a way to create a new source of revenue if that's possible based on how that's structured. So in short, I did spend a good amount of time looking at the budget. I have managed budgets for a number of businesses. My current company will probably deal with over $100 million, roughly do $100 to $120 million worth of energy contracts this year in the solar space. So the magnitude of the budget is something that is generally comfortable to me. But I guess in summary, I see years 4 through 10 of the budget as something that needs to be addressed with some thought and planning.
Thank you.
Hey, Mrs. Roger.
Okay. What is the achievement gap? What, in your opinion, are some of the causes and possible solutions?
Yeah, so the achievement gap is a description of differences in both academic, but also I'd say social, mental stability and health of students across the district. And I guess in reviewing approaches to that, I would view the LCAP program as a key part of trying to address the achievement gap. So my understanding of the LCAP program, and I read through the many pages of the LCAP program, and I found it very encouraging how much measurability is in the LCAP program as a side comment. But so the LCAP, my understanding is it's designed to help English learners, homeless and foster children, and children with socially or just economic disadvantaged children. And so I think that the LCAP is part of the achievement gap. And so I think you can say there's a community of children in the district that need extra support, and the LCAP program, in my review of it, provides a strong structure for doing that. It appears it provides a curriculum component, a support component, and then the culture of care that go into LCAP, kind of supported with a thread of technology and supportive programs across that. To talk about the achievement gap specifically, though, I would, in my mind, I see two different challenges there. One is a socioeconomic challenge, which I think the LCAP directly addresses. The second is I think that there's differences in learning styles that we're becoming increasingly aware of and understanding. And I think addressing differences in learning styles is part of addressing the achievement gap, and addressing differences in opportunity is part of addressing the achievement gap. And so to speak to each of those, I'll start with learning style. I think that there's really a two-phase approach to addressing different learning styles and enabling children that might absorb information differently to succeed. And I think the first component of that was curriculum-based. And so having kids grow up in the district, I watched them go through the Common Core transition. I had a kid who did sixth grade under one paradigm, and my daughter came through 3 years later and she was under a different paradigm. And I saw the Common Core change the way elementary school children were taught in the district. And I found that very encouraging because to me, the Common Core was aimed at addressing different learning styles. And I had children with different learning styles, and I appreciated the fact that information was taught in different ways. So I think curriculum was step one there. I think step two is the way children absorb information today has changed dramatically in the last 10 years between technology and phones and streaming of content. And so I think that there's a second component after curriculum that involves technology and understanding how to bring technology into the learning place. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean everyone needs a device. What I mean is that you might have I'll give an example. Maybe you have one child who's really effective at learning in the classroom with the textbook, and then you have another who's more effective at learning in a group with peers, and then you've got a third who needs to present material to really learn it, and then maybe there's a fourth that doesn't have the attention span to sit and go through a class, but can absorb 30-second, 60-second pieces of content very effectively. I think there's ways to apply technology applications to identify the learning styles of different children and address all four of those children in a specific way that speaks to their learning style. And so I've spent 25 years in the technology industry, and I'm not positioning myself as a technology expert that's going to come in and say, here's all these fun solutions to use. But I do think that I think there's an acknowledgement that the way children absorb information has changed, and that there needs to be some evolution in the way information is presented. And I think technology is part of that solution. And I hope that my experience of technology could be something that provides some input on that. So in short, I think I've rambled a bit on you, but I'm going to come back to your question. You asked about the achievement gap. I think that there's a learning style achievement gap, or a way that information is absorbed cause, and there's a more socioeconomic cause. I'll speak to the LCAP briefly. The LCAP seems like a very well-structured program to me in terms of its concept and its layout. Like I mentioned, the fact that it has very clear, measurable, detailed goals seems like a legitimate material, well thought out program to me in reviewing it. I think the thing I would try to help with there is, as I mentioned, how do we bring technology and innovation and new ways of learning in on top of that? And kind of in summary on this topic, I having worked with technology for 25 years, I've observed that technology can be something that widens gaps or closes gaps. And left to its own devices, technology falls into the hands of families and children that have economic means, and not those that don't. And the kids with economic means are put in front of opportunities to learn in new ways. And I think we need to be proactive about making sure technology is introduced to the socioeconomic group that doesn't have it automatically given to them. And specifically, I think there's ways, as we concept Measure D and Measure C's implementation, to think about shared learning spaces in the schools, places where kids that perhaps don't have the technology at home can not only get access to technology at the school place, but also access to people that understand the technology. So giving someone an iPad doesn't solve it. Giving them a mentor or teacher who shows them how to learn on it is part of the solution. So in summary, the achievement gap is something that I would be passionate about. I think I would view my presence on this board as really, you may ask about mission vision coming up, so I'll speak briefly to it, but I'd be shocked if you don't ask about it. But when I do read the mission vision, the all means all is important, and I think it's the thing that stands out in the mission. And all means giving everyone opportunity, and I'm afraid that opportunities becoming more diversifying, not more consistent, and I would like to help change that. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Mr. Buckman, oh, good. Yeah, turn on your mic, please.
Thank
I
you.
just had instructions
I-
to make sure you did that. Thank you.
Learn to count to 4. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. My question is, understanding that there are many issues that are brought before the school board, how can individual board members remain focused on the mission of student achievement and well-being?
Well, I think it starts with the mission, vision, and values. And so, I think you're bringing up a couple topics there. How does an individual board member stay focused on the well-being of the students? And how does the board as a whole stay effective at working together as a unit towards serving the district? And so I would say the first thing is, clearly embracing the mission, vision, values, clearly revisiting them and keeping them current, and having the whole board clearly bought into them is critical. And so as I mentioned, I've started a number of businesses and been on leadership teams of a number of businesses. And similarly, you create clear vision, mission, and vision and values for your team. And the more successful businesses I've been in have had clear mission, vision, and values that could be articulated from the top of the company to everyone in the company. And so I think to your question really speaks to how do you execute that. I think that I think mission, vision, values is first. I think second is really having a set of core values as a board member that is going to ensure you're doing the right thing for the children of the district. And so I think really to answer your question, I'm going to answer why am I applying? And so I am applying because I believe everyone that is able to should serve their community. And for me, I've been in the business community here. I've had a great business career, and it's a nice, successful part of my life, but it's not the fulfilling, meaningful part of my life. And I think if you look at what I've done over my 20 years in San Luis Obispo, is I've consistently aimed to volunteer and provide community service with programs that help children. And so I'm coming at this from the perspective that I want to serve the children of the school district, and the children, all of them, are the priority and reason to do that. So you asked the question of how do you stay focused? Well, if your focus is to do what's right for the children of the district, and that's always your focus, I think that you put that together with the mission, vision, values, you're going to stay on track. And it's not about me, it's about the children. And if all 7 people on the board have that perspective, I think there's a good chance for success. But I mean, on that topic, I did want to speak to kind of my history working with children, because I think that's relevant to your question. And I'm hoping this is not just words, but I can demonstrate through action a commitment to working with children and to the success of children. And so to just touch on a few things, when I was in college in the 1990s, I served as a big brother for 3 years. I worked with a 9 turned into 12-year-old boy who didn't have a father, and I was able to be, I think, a stabilizing person in his life, and that was a really meaningful relationship for me when I was in college. My wife and I moved to San Luis Obispo in 2003, and our 3 kids have gone K through 12 through the school district. My daughter's still in 11th grade, so hoping she makes it, but we K through 12 all the way. But I think I wanted to demonstrate commitment through children through a couple of other examples. From 2008 to 2014, I served on the board of court-appointed special advocates of San Luis Obispo. If you're not familiar with that program, most of you probably are, but I'll just touch on it briefly. It creates a structure for adult volunteers to go work with children that are abused and neglected, and to learn their personal situation, provide support to them, and to find a stable outcome for them, which in many cases means getting the child back with a family member. In other cases, it means getting them into the foster system. But it's a very, very important program in San Luis Obispo that serves abused and neglected children in our community. I've also spent 7 years on the board of Slow Youth Baseball, which runs the local baseball league. I was the president of the league. I think the highlights of that, though, is that I worked with some really notable other board members who were school district employees. I mean, specifically Aaron Black and John Andre, to create a scholarship program that made the program more inclusive, and it brought more children into the league by letting those that couldn't pay to be in the league to participate. I also co-founded a division called the Challenger Division, which is for physically and mentally basically children who can't participate in the main league, that because they're not physically or mentally able to. And that was a program that didn't exist in San Luis Obispo that I think serves an important need. And I also then worked with the district through the YSA as part of that experience. But sir, I'll hit on a couple other points, but I have a couple other points about my experience with children that I'll see if there's a question that comes up to address, and if not, I'll just hit it into closing. But to your question, Mark, I think you asked what would allow me to kind of have the vision and focus to serve the children of the district, and it's, I think, three things. It's a clear commitment to serving all the children of the district as my top priority. It's understanding and embracing the mission, vision, values of the board. And then it's my perspective and history of service to children in the district. Yep. What's next?
It's me.
All right.
Okay, here we go. As a board member, how would you foster a climate of trust, not only on the board, but also throughout the community and the district?
I think this speaks to core values. And I think it speaks to how you approach conversations and relationships. And so if you look across my experience on nonprofit boards and in the business community, I think you'll find my approach, as I mentioned, is to be collaborative, team-oriented, and inclusive. And so to me, trust is earned. So to build a climate of trust, you have to earn that. And you earn that by being empathetic. You learn that by being consistent. You learn that by being honest. You learn that by being humble. You learn that by being team-oriented. And I think that those are characteristics that I work hard to embrace. And so I think if I were to join the board, my first goal would be to learn how to be an effective collaborator on the board, to learn a range of topics that I need to know more detail about. But I think it starts with those core values, but then I think there's an execution component of how do you interact, and how do you interact with your other board members, and how do you interact with the community. And so, I mean, I'd say some core concepts there are, I think you need to start from the standpoint that every opinion across the board is valid and is worth listening to. I think you need to understand that when a decision's made, the board is making a decision as a group, and even if it's not in alignment with my personal view, it's the board's decision, and it's my job to support that decision, even if it's not my personal view. And so I think when you then go out to the community, it's critical that the board stay united in their perspective and their voice. And so I think one of the things this board has done over the last decades is to build credibility. And that credibility is built by being consistent and by being thoughtful. And I would view my role as being a steward of that, and I would view it as a high responsibility to carry that forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your last question is from Mr. Banfield.
Could you share any experiences you might have had working with colleagues on a problem where there was both a diversity of opinion and a spirit of cooperation in the solution?
Yes. So I think that happens to me every day, first of all. So I'm just trying to figure out how to thoughtfully respond. So I'll give you a couple examples. I have been involved in the early stages in the growth of 4 businesses based in San Luis Obispo that have grown to various levels. And there's constantly varying opinions about strategy and approach and how fast to grow, how to treat your team, and how to build how to build your environment. So I haven't given you a specific example yet, but I would say that working through dynamic environments and constant challenges and coming up with team-based decisions is something that I do constantly. And so I think in speaking to an experience that's more relevant here, though, I'd like to speak to my experience with Measure D. In 2014, I got to work with the district closely by co-chairing the Measure D campaign. There were 3 of us that co-chaired the campaign. I was the San Luis Obispo. We had a San Luis Obispo parent, a Morro Bay parent, a Los Osos parent. I was the San Luis Obispo parent in that experience. So my example here is not actually about Measure D. I think Measure D being the election process. It was Measure D, the implementation process. But I do want to speak to Measure D, the campaign, the election process a little bit for a few reasons. I mean, first of all, that's when I got to know Catherine. Catherine worked with the Measure D committee closely. We would hub out of her house when we'd go walk precincts. So I'd meet up with her on Saturday and Sunday morning at her house. She'd rally the troops, give them a pep talk. We'd go out and we'd hit the precincts. I feel like there's big shoes to fill in this process today. And I just viewed her as a really caring, thoughtful person who put her heart into this school district. And so working with her on Measure D was not an example of conflict, just a really good experience. But what was interesting about Measure D, so we went out, we presented that to the community, we were successful. We had, whatever, 72% support. It was great. I served on the committees afterwards, and there was a large amount of disagreement, particularly from the perspective of the high school teachers on how to implement the money with Measure D. And so, at one point in time, there was a road tour of schools that had just gone through renovation, and the teachers saw some things that, there was an argument to put all the money into the 100 building, and then there was an argument to spread it out. And then there's a community saying, I need a track, I need, everyone has a view. But so I mean, that process after the successful election was one that really required a lot of collaboration. And there were some strong opinions within the teacher base that the approach should be done differently. And I think, as a parent on that, I participated. My voice was more, let's deliver what we promised the voters. As the person who was out presenting that to the voters, I thought it was important to do what we said. And so I was happy to see that the final plan ended up closer to what we said than what was proposed as a change. But I think that's one example, and I'm going to give you a second example. In 2012, I served on the district's Accelerated Learning Committee, which at the time was trying to assess, what to do with Teach School. Teach was over at the Vicious Peak campus. It was out of room, and there was a discussion. Should Teach go somewhere else? Should Teach not go anywhere? Should Teach go away? And so there was an Accelerated Learning Committee that was put together, and we met over about 6 months. but it had teachers and it had staff members and it had community members. The thing that was really remarkable to me about that experience was I came into it as a parent of a fourth grader at Teach. And, you know, when your kid's happy somewhere, you advocate for it, right? And so I was an advocate for Teach. The voices that really struck me in that discussion, though, were the fifth and sixth grade. There's some really strong fifth and sixth grade teachers from the neighborhood elementary schools that participated in that accelerated learning committee. And they made great points about their schools, about the environments they created, about the learning environment there. And I mean, I think we got to an outcome there where Teach was able to continue as something for parents to choose if they wanted. But my appreciation and understanding of the neighborhood schools actually was a major takeaway for me from that experience, because you know, obviously just getting to, as a parent, you don't get to interact with teachers at different schools, and that let me see just some really strong teachers who were leaders of their school and passionate about their programs.
Those are all our questions. Do you have any comments, any closing comments for us?
Yeah.
I thought you might.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, there's probably a question of, you know, why did you apply? Why would you be a good candidate? And, you know, why are you standing in front of us today, and why should we consider you? And so there's a few things I haven't talked about that I think are important. So I did not grow up in San Luis Obispo. My wife and I met in the Bay Area. And when we were married and deciding to have kids, we said, where do we want to live? And so we did a process where we looked at 5 different communities throughout California. She was from San Diego. I grew up in Santa Barbara and went to high school in Davis. And so we said, let's look around California here. And we went to Monterey, we went to San Luis Obispo, we went to Santa Barbara, we went to San Clemente, and we went to San Diego. And the school district was one of the driving reasons we moved here. And so I saw San Luis Coastal School District at that point in time. And when we came to San Luis Obispo County, we were not going to live in a different school district. We were going to live in the district. It was part of why we moved here. Raising our kids through the public school system and doing it in a strong public school system was just a core conviction that my wife Erin and I had. And so the district in 2003 and its strength was really one of the main reasons we moved here. And so with that in mind, I guess I would kind of position myself, you know, 3 buckets of things to think about. The first is I'm a parent who has had their children go through the school district K through 12. I have a current high school student. I have perspectives on what their experiences have been like. My sons both served on the superintendent senate. My second son was up here presenting to you guys last year as the student body president of SLO High. And so I think that I'm passionate about the school district because of what it's done for my family. And I saw that potential before we even moved here. And I've lived that potential through my kids going K through 12 in the district. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I believe strongly in service. And I've spoken to some of my experiences, but I mentioned Big Brothers Big Sisters and CASA and the SLO Youth Baseball and the Accelerated Learning Committee and Measure D. I've also spent the last 6 years on the booster board at SLO High School called the Black and Gold. If you guys know the booster setup there, there's multiple. There's an athletic booster and there's an academic and non-athletic booster. I'm on the non-athletic one, and the reason that's not what's called, but I mean, I'm the Black and Gold serves the clubs and the fine arts and the non-athletic extracurricular activities as well as scholarships at the high school. One of my children is really into athletics, but the Black and Gold served all 3 of my children. And one of the most rewarding things for me, having worked on Measure D, was to see my oldest son go through the SLO High School drama program. And so he now is a sophomore in New York studying drama. He would not be studying drama in college if it wasn't for the SLO High School drama program. And that's just the truth. He would not be. And he was so engaged freshman and sophomore year by his drama experience was so high that it changed his path. And we talk about living a life of purpose. His life of purpose, it's a pretty cool life. He lives in New York and he studies drama, but it's a cool life of purpose that was driven by the school district. But seeing Measure D come in now and seeing the new theater is personally just really rewarding to me. I'm going to see Mamma Mia in March here. My daughter will be participating. And I think one thing I haven't spoken to is I really have a passion for the performing arts. And my son was changed by the performing arts program at SLO High. I've been very active with the Black and Gold for that reason. And I think support for clubs and the performing arts is really, really important. I've also served on the SLO High School Site Council, and I've served on the SLO Chamber of Commerce Board, which is less relevant directly, but it's just another kind of perspective in the community. And I think the reason I bring all that up is I hope that my application will be considered as something where I can bring a complementary presence and some complementary experiences to the board. I think if the current board did not have deep experience in education, I would not view myself as a strong candidate. I think education comes first, and the experience you guys have is critical. I think knowing that you have it, I can bring business and community service experience and complementary experience as a member of the community that I think would add a new dimension on top of the core that you already have. And I think I'll just close by saying, I would aim to bring humility, empathy, and honesty to my role here, and I would aim to be a team player. And I just really appreciate being considered and hope I can be a collaborator on your team someday soon. So
Thank you very
that's
much.
all I got.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. Do you want a break? Can we, Dr. Prater, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Break for 5 minutes.
You. They were. We have our questions that were generated by our random question selector. And we're asking them in a specific order. And our first question will be directed to you by Ms. Dobler-Drew.
Well, hello. I want to ask you, what is the role of what do you feel is the role of the school board and of an individual board member?
The school board has to be aware of what's going on in the classroom, which is a challenge. But they need to know the programs that work and the programs that don't work. It's our responsibility to make sure that the atmosphere, hopefully, and the collegiality of the teachers is positive, hopefully, that we're working together for the benefit of the students. That the programs that we choose to initiate in our school system are proven and work well and can be assessed and can be proven to be positive. I think that there's a fiduciary responsibility. And I think that that's a very important part of the school board also. I think as a school board member, it would be very important to know, to be aware of what's going on in the different schools, to visit the schools, to feel the climate of the different schools. And where you can, perhaps as a group or as an individual, make suggestions to improve what needs to be done in order to make it a better, happier learning experience for everyone, for the teachers as well as for the children. And I think working with the superintendent is extremely important. Sharing the vision and working together cooperatively with the other board members. Keeping a positive, optimistic view, which we need to have in order to make progress, I think. I think each member needs to contribute, needs to do their homework, needs to be aware of what's going on and what needs to change, perhaps. I think just keeping yourself informed, talking with others, knowing what's going on, and contributing where you can. Each of us has an expertise. Sharing that expertise is helpful. And proceeding with the program outlined by the vision and the strategy, I think is our duty.
Thank you. Mr. Unger has the next question.
Sure. Excuse me. Tell us about your understanding of how our district's funded, and then how might this affect our ability to meet the board's stated priorities?
I would have to do a lot of homework on that. And I admit that I don't know exactly how we're funded. I know that we passed the bill to get our high schools and junior highs fixed and middle schools. And we've done very well with that. And I know that Proposition C, or the building for the elementary schools, passed, and I know that's going to be very wonderful to see done. I know that we get a certain amount from property tax, don't we? And a certain amount from the state. And we can apply for grants and other things, which we do. We also have the San Luis Coastal Educational Foundation, which is absolutely wonderful and helps us. So we have many, many different ways of funding things. And I would be most interested in finding out how much and where it comes from and all of this business. I'm a pretty quick study.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Roger.
What is the achievement gap? And what, in your opinion, are some of the causes and possible solutions?
The achievement gap is, I think, of course, you could think of it in different ways, but where the child should be, being a fourth grader, 10 years old, and where the child is really, whether they score at a second grade level, that would be a severe achievement gap. And I think I don't believe so much in remedial help as I do inspirational help. Challenging in some kind of way that makes the child feel like you have faith in them, that they can learn in a variety of ways, not just doing the same thing over and over again until they get it. That would be the worst thing in the world to do for a child. But I think there are many ways to learn. And I think we need to try all of them. If a child is struggling, try different ways and involve the child in his learning process. I think parental involvement is incredibly important. I know school districts who have, especially for their language learners, they'll have programs for the parents in the evening when the parents get off work, so that the parents are learning also with their children. And I think that's a wonderful program. I'm not sure that we do that. I think it's one of our strategies that we are trying to get more of, where we have more adult involvement in learning. I would hope that we would inspire our children to be lifelong learners. That's one thing that I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a perennial student, and life is too fascinating to let people just get stale. I think it's the curiosity and the thrill of learning and being involved in your own learning, determining what thrills you. That's the way you learn what you're supposed to do, right? If you love doing it, find a way to do it and get paid for it. The achievement gap is rough right now. I think it's a problem for our school district and every school district because of COVID. And we need to take steps and really work hard on all working together to make this work. The MTSS that we have going on in our schools is something we need to support and have people involved with our children all the way along.
Thank you.
Right, Mr. Buckman.
Thank you. Hi. Understanding that there are many issues that are brought before the school board, how can individual board members remain focused on the mission of student achievement and well-being?
Well, I think that's our focus. That's what we're supposed to do. We can get distracted. But I think we always have to come back to the individual student and how we can help them be a lifelong learner, be focused on their direction, where they're going in life. And they need to own that. Hopefully they will, if they're given the right direction. We have to focus on the achievements of our children and stay guiding them. Lots of distractions. Yeah, we always come back to the child.
Thank you. As a board member, how would you foster a climate of trust, not only on the board, but also throughout the community and the district?
Well, I think by being trustworthy. And I think by honoring other people respectfully and making other people feel worthy. Everybody has something to contribute. Respectful feelings for the children, respectful feelings for the teachers, and helping them be their best selves. And be honest and supportive in any way you can be. I think if you want an inclusive atmosphere and a trustful atmosphere in your classroom, you have to be trustworthy and you have to make the children feel safe, that they are precious, and that there's nothing that will make you not like them. They are our focus. And I think that goes for the people around you. You can feel that they are special, they are honored, they are trustworthy. And I think what goes around comes around. We work together.
Thank you. And the final question is from Mr. Banfield.
Could you share any experiences you might have had working with colleagues on a problem where there was both a diversity of opinions and a spirit of cooperation in the solution?
Good question. As a music teacher, we were given our schedules by the administration. We were told where we would go, when we would go, and where we would be at a certain time. I had 5 schools. Every day I traveled from one school to another. The old play yogurt on the steering wheel, right at noon. And we teachers, we 4 music teachers had a problem with this. And we decided together that we would ask the district if we couldn't determine our own schedules or work with them to determine our own schedules. And it was because we were teaching the children when the teachers had prep. We were kind of locked in. It made it very difficult. And the person who was designated to be our boss, in quotes, for the district, had trouble with us being so arrogant to think that we could make up our own schedules, heaven forbid. But we did get to do it one year. We got input. And it was absolutely wonderful. And it made a difference. And I think up to that time, and this was San Luis Coastal, up to that time, I don't think our music teachers had said boo. They just went along with it. But because we discussed it among ourselves and presented in such a way, we did get input. And the teacher, the administrator who was in charge of the prep teachers in their time, worked with us. And it was a little easier. We never got to choose our own schedules or anything because we didn't have the knowledge. We didn't have all of the information that we needed. But we did get to give input, and we did get some resolution, which made it better. And we were grateful. And it worked out. So.
That's our last question. Do you have any closing comments for us?
Well, this has been a wonderful experience for me. I'm glad to know we have such good people on our board, and I am truly impressed with the quality. I'm not schmoozing. I'm being honest. I've taught some of your kids. I know where they come from. I know the families. And I'm grateful for that, having had that opportunity. And I hope I get it. I think I have a lot to contribute. But if I don't, this has been an enriching experience, and I'm grateful for it. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. You may either stay in the room here. We have one more person to interview, or you can go back next door, whatever you prefer.
I'll let that person do it.
Yeah, there you go. Set up.
What? Call Mandy Dawson. Whoa.
Ellen, there's no sound.
By me or at all?
Now we have sound for you. Sorry about that, but there was no sound coming through there since you guys started.
Eve, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can now.
Thank you. So your first question will be asked by Ms. Dobler-Drew.
Hello. What do you feel is the role of the school board and of an individual school board member?
I think the role of the school board is to be a conduit between the community and the school system. And that needs to go both ways. So obviously, as a school board member, I would want to represent the community, bring forward questions and concerns that are emerging in the community. But I think also school boards have a proactive role to play in communicating what's going on in the schools, communicating about programs and policies before questions come up.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Mr. Unger.
So can you tell us your understanding of how our district's funded and how might this affect our ability to meet the board's stated priorities?
So I know there's been a large shift in how California funds its schools with the local control funding plan. And I think it's wonderful that there's more community input in that plan. I hope that I haven't been here long enough to see, but I have seen across the state that there's a real range of how substantive and how meaningful that input is. And so I would want to make sure that that process is something that really engages people in meaningful conversations about the best way for the funds to be allocated.
Mrs. Roger.
Let's see, okay. What is the achievement gap? And what, in your opinion, are some of the causes and possible solutions?
Wow,
I'm
good
going to,
question.
sorry, I'm going to ask Mrs. Roger to repeat that. You didn't have your mic on and it's hard for the people. on. I just.
You
heard
just did, oh, I beg your pardon, okay. What is the achievement gap? And what, in your opinion, are some of the causes and possible solutions?
Okay, this one I may need more than 3 minutes. This is something I've thought about a lot. First of all, I'll say I was looking just earlier today at some data from this school district to get a handle on the size. And one thing I noticed is that the gap seems to be a bit larger in math, and particularly high school math. Jumped out at me. So that's something that I would want to look at. But backing up from what is the achievement gap, I went, as you do, to look directly at test scores because those are the numbers that are there. Those are easy to access. And they're stark. The gaps here are certainly no worse, and then look to me eyeballing it a bit better than is the case statewide. But I would say it's been a fact, well known in education research since the late 60s, that one of the strongest correlations you can see in social science is between the income level and education level of families and the test scores in those schools. And in fact, I graphed out the schools in this district, and it's very much the same. So back to your question, Mr. Unger, I understand that a lot of the local control funding formula is aimed to that gap. One of the things that I'm really paying attention to right now is community schools. And I don't know if that's something that's been explored in this community, but it's something that is very much priority at the state level. And I think that's probably the best solution that I've seen for the achievement gap.
It's community schools.
And just to explain what community schools are, community schools bring together all of the services that a child and the family supporting that child would need. So you have medical clinic, you have access to CalFresh funding, you have mental health services, you have social workers. Because I think the achievement gap is largely an opportunity gap, a health gap, a housing gap. And I think schools are often made to sort of hold the bag for those social inequities. And so I think the community schools model is a wonderful approach. That's where the schools are, that's where the kids are, and that's where the families are. And so having the services there in the schools, don't quote me on it, but I want to say it's something like a $3 billion bill that's just been passed at the state level for community schools. So that's something I would certainly want to look at if I were a board member.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Buckman.
Thank you.
Hi.
Understanding that there are many issues that are brought before the school board, how can individual members remain focused on the mission of student achievement and well-being?
That's a tough one too. I think having multiple avenues for people to provide that input, again, in as meaningful and substantive ways as possible, not just in formal board meetings. I went to the community priorities workshop that the city council had a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was beautifully designed to give people the opportunity to interact with different parts of the city government. They had different stations. You can talk to the water people over here. You can talk to the housing people over here. They had a nice system where using your phone, you could rank your priorities, but you could also just talk to the officials who were in charge of something like that. So I think forums like that, where people could actually interact with people in the district. Let's talk about what the literacy curriculum is. Let's talk about how we're funding athletics. So I think that could take some of the pressure out of the formal school board meeting.
Thank you very much.
Right. I have the next question. And that is, as a board member, how would you foster a climate of trust, not only on the board, but also throughout the community and the district?
Well, I think an event like the one I just mentioned would be one way to do that. I think having board members available in the informal settings, maybe having quote unquote office hours at a coffee shop. And I don't know if that violates, if that would have to be on the record. I know, I think that's part of the problem of trust sometimes is all of the formality. And so I wonder if there are more informal ways that board members could be in dialogue with members of the community.
Thank you. Mr. Banfield.
Could you share any experiences you might have had working with colleagues on a problem where there was both a diversity of opinions and a spirit of cooperation in the solution?
I'm thinking about, I think this is a relevant example. I'm thinking about a education foundation that I work with in Southern California. They work in Los Angeles and Orange counties, and they were founded because one wealthy individual had a teacher who changed his life in the 3rd grade. And so what he wanted to do with all his money is help good teachers become great teachers. And he had this sort of model of the superstar teacher who's going to change your life. And their grant making was very much around that. And the family members of the foundation were very committed to that. As a staff member, as a consultant and working with some of the staff members, the diversity of opinion came in around this idea of, can one great teacher do it? Or do you need to think about the culture of the whole school and how teachers collaborate and work together? And isn't that a more equitable way to bring about change, because if we just focus on the teachers who are already good, what happens to the kids who have teachers who are really struggling and need support? So it was a long process because it was something, you know, that this individual felt very passionately about, and it was his money. And that had always been the mission. So I would say it was a process of a couple of years of bringing in both research, but metaphors, examples, just to slowly help that board think about the problem in a slightly different way. And they have, in fact, ended up changing their program to be less focused on individual teachers and more about the collective professional culture in the school. And I think in a way that meets his original passion for supporting teachers, but in a way that I think I convinced him is going to have longer lasting impact. That if you focus on those individual teachers, it's hard for them to keep going in a school where everything else is pulling in the opposite direction.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask if you have any closing comments for us.
No, I think I hesitated a little bit to even throw my hat in the ring because I am very new in the community. I recognize that, but this is a community we chose after long consideration. We're passionate about it. We love it. We're not going anywhere. And it's an opportunity. I would love to serve the community in that way. I think it seems like you have a lot of stability in your school system, good relationship as far as I can see with unions. So you've got a solid foundation. I would love to be part of the next steps.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You may wait here or go next door, whichever you prefer. And yes, please. Yeah, that'd be great.
I did a lot of writing.
Yeah, me too.
I want to know, and I guess I have to ask in the public view, which of the candidates reside in
Oh, I can tell you.
area 7? Because that's
The ones
preferred.
who do not are Matthew Savage and
Okay, so that means
that means
that Susan does.
Susanna
Pardon me, she's in area 7.
and,
Ryan is.
and Marty. Yeah, so the middle three. And I think that's a good thing to start. I'll mention that at the outset when we begin our discussion.
Not Ellen.
Hold on just a second, Eve. I'm going to run next door and make sure that the mics are all on.
Okay.
It's a mystery person.
Okay, it does sound like the mics are all on now, Eve.
Well, I want to ask you, are they going to all stay in the room for our discussion or?
Yes, they are. Yes. Yes, that's the way it works. This is all a public discussion from this moment forward. All of the applicants are present in the room with us.
Then we have the option to ask some follow-up questions.
No, we do not. This is now our opportunity to discuss among ourselves how, and nominate and vote for an applicant to be on the board. But we don't, they can listen to our discussion, to listen to us talk about them, but they are not, this is now our portion of the meeting with one another.
Okay.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So at this time, we'll open it up to board discussion and just the only comment I'm going to make is just to remind the board, I know a couple people have asked about the residency of the applicants, and Ms. Lerner, Mr. Clausen, and Ms. Lindholm all reside in trustee area 7. And Mr. Savage and Dr. Nelson are outside of trustee area 7. And at this time, I would open it up to for discussion or a nomination or whatever. This is our time now to think about this. Mr. Unger.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for being here. I know that this is difficult, you know, it's having a job interview in front of the public on television, putting yourself out there for something that is a difficult, sometimes thankless, but very rewarding job. At least that's what I found in my number of years of experience. And I want to also just acknowledge that I've learned something from each one of you. You know, it's one of the things that I've learned as being a trustee is listen closely, because you might find out things that you didn't know. And I think that I've clearly found that out about each one of you, and your character and your willingness to support and serve your community. I will say that in my opinion, one person did really rise to the top, and I'm going to support that person. I'm not going to make a motion right now, because I know that there are others that would like to do so as well. But Mr. Clausen, I think that you definitely showed that you did your homework. You answered the questions thoroughly. And I think at this point, you would probably be the best person to hit the ground running for the district. So those are my comments.
Anyone else at this time? You turn your mic on so we can, Mr. Buckman?
Thank you. This is a crazy question, I guess. And I don't know who else to turn to, so I'm going to turn to the lawyer. I heard at least 2 of the candidates that might end up with contracts with the district or be involved with the district. And I just don't know. I mean, we rely a lot on, as a district, we rely a lot on our local contacts and our local businesses. And I just wondering, I don't know. I don't even know if it's something to worry about.
Any trustee would be governed by the conflict of interest rules.
Can I just, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So with regards to your question, Mr. Buckman, as this board knows, we've done a lot of trainings from Lozana Smith with the county, with your board in particular. There's rules of ethics, of course, that apply for all board members that wish to serve, and those that are prospective as well. So main issue would be Government Code 1090. So that would mean that a district cannot enter into a contract if a member has a financial interest in that contract, which would mean it's not just going to be an abstention that would suffice. It would mean the board would actually be prohibited from entering into that agreement. So to the extent that there are any business or contracts with particular companies that any of these fine candidates are connected to and have an actual financial interest in, that potentially could preclude the district from entering into those types of agreements. Of course, there are ways around this, of course, you know, if that financial interest doesn't exist anymore, or depending on the level of financial interest in that company, we can evaluate, you know, whether or not it is them themselves that have that financial interest, a spouse, or an attenuated family member or relationship type interest, that can change the outcome with those ethics.
Thanks. And I'm, now that I have that answer, I'm going to sort of agree right now, unless something changes my mind with Chris. I think Mr. Clausen is probably our best candidate.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Banfield, Mrs. Roger, Mr. Banfield.
Before I say anything, I did not realize that the candidates would be listening to this discussion. And be it on the record, I'm a little bit, I feel it's almost awkward for me to say anything. So I will try my very best to couch my remarks in an acceptable way. I appreciated how, at least in, now, this is subjective too. I'm sorry, it is. I was going through this rubric and everything. But I would be a liar to say that there's not a little bit of subjectivity in our decision making. I appreciated how Susanna answered the questions in a very direct way. My vote is for her.
Thank you. I'm going to make a comment that I went through this for all of you. I went through this process this way, the appointment process. And Mr. Banfield, I will agree with you that it felt very awkward to be in the audience while my qualifications and character were being discussed. But that is the way the Brown Act works. It's our public meeting laws in the state of California. And it was an interesting, and I agree, you used the word awkward is apt. But that's the way this process works.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, as they say. So, and I understand to some degree or another, at least I even though it's been many years, I well recall how awkward I felt at this moment in these proceedings. So we're sympathetic to what this must be like for you, but this is the way the process works. Mr. Buckman.
And if I can, I was so nervous about asking my question. I forgot to thank everybody because this had to be terrible experience. It's like probably going back to school. You don't even know who the teacher is. And I just want to thank you because just as Mr. I think any one of you could do this job. And I'm just amazed at the quality of candidates that we got. So thank you all very much.
I have something to say.
Yes.
I appreciate all of the candidates coming forward. That shows a measure of desire to participate and do what you can to make things better, to make life better, to contribute and give back to the community, every single one of you. And so you're all winners right now. But what I was looking at is there's the subjectivity that Mr. Banfield is talking about. And there's also boxes to check that our form talks about. And I feel, based on a preference for somebody filling the place of trustee area 7, even though this position was based on a different districting of the district, prior to that. So you don't have to be, but that's actually the least of it. It seems that there's a lot of boxes checked by Mr. Clausen, and that's because of his inextricable involvement in the district already, the concrete contributions he's already made, and the experience he has had with so many aspects of this particular district, so that if we were to choose him, it would not reflect on anybody else's qualifications. It just is like how all the stars come into alignment kind of thing. But I also have a caveat here about the possibility of the board starting, if Mr. Clausen is the one, the board coming to look at him as an expert in many situations, so that his opinion or his statement on different areas could possibly hold more weight than somebody that doesn't have that financial background who's on the board. So that would be a caveat, that although he seems to be the expert candidate here because of his involvement, his experience, his background right here, I mean, it's like he's targeted this district for a long, long time, right? He's wanted to be here a long time. So that doesn't reflect on any of the rest of you. But there's a caveat about saying that he's such an expert and has so much experience that we need to listen to him more than other board members. So although I would say I believe that he is the obvious candidate, I also would, I had that original question about the conflicts of interest, but now Mr. Whiteside has put that to rest. And also was listening to him talk about that a candidate should not push an agenda. So I'm wondering if an issue comes up in this new kind of society we have post-COVID, with a lot of division in society and a lot more laws coming out of Sacramento regarding the rights of this person over that person. If issues come up that look like they go against the best interests of students in our district, of our children, and you feel it very strongly, should you still vote? And I don't want him to answer this, but it's a rhetorical. Should you still vote yes if you're in your heart of hearts, you feel like you should speak out on that issue, knowing that you'll probably be overridden by the majority anyway? And myself, I've been in that position just 2 times, I think. Usually we always have a 7-0 vote on everything, but there's certain issues that you're more passionate about and you feel like you see what's coming down the pike if the board doesn't do something to mitigate the effect of a particular state law, for example. So the question is whether he would always say, I have to vote yes, because most of them feel that way, or, you know, could he say no, because in his heart, he sees a danger in certain things. That's my statement.
Thank you. Mrs. Roger, do you have anything to add?
I do. I appreciate everyone coming and throwing your hats in the ring. It's not an easy thing, as everybody said. I'm really glad I'm on this side of the table and not on that side of the table, because it just takes a lot of courage to come and be interviewed in a forum like this. So thank you, everyone. For me, there are several things. I am interested in the people who reside in Area 7, because there is a learning curve to being on the board. And that curve, could be a year or 2 years to get to where you really feel comfortable. And then if you decide that board service is something you enjoy and want to pursue, Area 7 will be the area that you will have an opportunity to run. So for me, that's an important consideration. I too feel that Mr. Clausen, was the best versed candidate. Everyone had the opportunity to research our funding mechanisms, for example. He did his research on that. He also is familiar with the LCAP, which is a really key part of what the board does, is approving the LCAP. The board approves the budget and keeps an eye on the budget. We hire the superintendent, we approve the LCAP, and among other things, but those are our big responsibilities. And Mr. Clausen demonstrated a clear and thorough understanding, I think, of those 3 things. In addition to which, I just think, when he said that you shouldn't come with an agenda, and Ms. Dobler-Drew question that, my interpretation of what he was saying was that you should come to the board with a heart for all children. And though, some people, I guess, would want to come because they have a particular interest in special education or accelerated learning or English language learners, whatever it might be, your particular area of interest and focus, you really can't serve well as a board member if you are serving one group to the exclusion of others. So I think you need to be broad, to be, as we say and we mean, all means all. That's all students are our students. In public education, we take all comers. Everybody who comes to our door is our student, and we serve them to the best of our ability. So in listening to everyone, like Mr. Unger said, there were things that I gleaned from what each person had to say that I'll be thinking about, and once this process is over. But for me, I think that Mr. Clausen rose to the top.
Thank you. And one of the things I noticed on reflecting on what everybody had to say is all of you came here with a sense of positivity. No one came here because you feel it's a poor district, that we're not doing well, that you have a personal axe to grind, that you've seen horrible things going on here. You all walked into this with the sense that we have a successful, a good, we're providing opportunities for students as we should be, and your goal is to make it better. And that just makes me feel good about our district as a whole, and the interest the public has in it. That's very, all of you are leading lives of purpose. You want to continue to do so. You want to contribute. And it just makes me happy to be here and in your presence and what you are willing to offer and willing to do to create the environments, the educational opportunities, environments we want for all of our students. And that's just wonderful. It's really speaks to the outlook each of you has and what you were you in this position, what you would bring, that you would start from that. And that's pretty great. So having said that,
May I add something, Mrs. Sheffer? It's Eve. Yeah. I was wondering if we could share that we were looking for that balance, because we have a number of people with educational backgrounds, of finding somebody that had something different to bring to the table that could be a contribution in areas that some of us don't have. But also, I did mention before, we would want it to be balanced by knowing that everybody has an equal contribution as a board member. But yeah, so we were looking really for you with educational backgrounds, because I have one, and Mr. Unger, and who else?
Mr. Banfield.
Mr. Banfield, at least three of us, and some others have, like Mr. Buckman has been in education for a long time. Well, all of you have, because most of our board members have been on here for a long time. Mr. Banfield is the newest, and I've been on I was elected in 2020. And so, yeah, and Mr. Banfield was a teacher, I was a teacher. And so they were looking for something new to bring to the table that would be helpful for helping the board understand certain issues that we might not otherwise.
Thank you. And that I'm going to tag on to that and complete my comments. And that is that I appreciate the variety of folks who applied, and do like I also am going to choose to support Mr. Clausen. I like having the viewpoint from the business community, the private sector. I think that adds something, is an added value, as well as your knowledge, his knowledge of the district and involvement in it. But again, we all very much appreciate all of you being here and all that you've done to prepare and present to us today. So I would ask for if we have a nomination, Mr. Unger.
Yes, I would move that Brian Clausen be the provisional board member.
And I'll second.
Okay, and I'm going to take a roll call vote. Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield, Ms. Dobler Drew.
Yes. What was Mr. Banfield's? I couldn't hear it.
Yes, he said
Okay.
yes. Mr. Buckman? And I am a yes. Again, thank you all for going through this process. We really appreciate it. And Mr. Clausen, I would ask you to step up. You are going to be sworn in right now before you get away. No second thoughts.
Which side should I be on?
Is the mic on up there?
Right there. Am I good? Okay, Mr. Clausen, please repeat after me. I, Brian Clausen, do solemnly swear
I, Brian Clausen, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
Bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California,
That I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
And faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. We need to talk for a couple minutes.
Solid.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Clausen.
No, this is all for us. No, I'm gonna